Just want to have a quick touch base about we're coming up to our first complete draft. So I wanted to just have a little quick recentering about that. And so remember, every time you make a typo, the errorist wins. That was pretty funny, but you guys didn't laugh. That was pretty good. Yeah, that was a very funny joke. And you should stop clubbing, baby seals. Yeah. The fact that you guys don't get these concerns me. Yeah. Basic stuff, right? Basic stuff. We've had students that do not get a job because some of this most basic editing, they were sloppy with stuff. They were sloppy with their letters. They were sloppy with their interviews with people. So again, this is another skill we're working with you guys. So of course the product, we really want you guys to have a solid product. The process is part of what we're teaching you as well. So this stuff that we gave you the day on Tuesday to just be with your partner and to just deep, go into this in addition to whatever outside time you guys are putting in. All that stuff is important. This would definitely lose you a job if you guys said species, right? No such thing as species. Okay, so let's talk about as now we're starting to get into our complete draft, right? Complete draft meaning all the elements are there. So it's got your title, it's got your references, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So these are a few questions you can start to ask yourselves as you're looking at your paper or as you and your partner are going through your paper. And there are many other questions we could ask, but this is just to give us a little bit of a sense here. So, once we get it done, the reason you need to give us a complete draft is so that we can help you. If you don't give us a complete draft, we cannot help you, and we will not be getting you guys to the next level. So once we have that complete draft, then we can start to ask these kinds of questions, right? Before we have that, we can't really provide a real answer to this, and so we can't give you good feedback, and so you can't get better. So one is like, hey, how is this context? Did I explain what my paper is about and my argument is about to the viewer, to the person that's reading it for the first time? So my title of my paper, my core hypothesis, my central thesis, that kind of stuff. And then all the logistics about stuff, right? Proper grammar, no spelling errors, right? All that kind of stuff. That's to start. That is to start. There's absolutely no spelling errors. Everything is formatted totally perfectly. That's to start, and then we can go on. When you have this stuff getting in the way, we can't get to giving you guys feedback. And more importantly, that would, somebody that's thinking about hiring you, they would, game over right then. They're like, okay, this person can't write. And we have to do writing for our job. And again, you don't have to be the world's perfect writer, but you don't want to cut your legs out from underneath you before you even start the project or whatever. So that's all that stuff. Okay, next we got it named, and all the simple housekeeping kind of stuff is good to go. Okay, good. Now we get to the intellectual part of stuff. So do I have sufficient detail of the sampling design, the study that you quoted, or whatever it is? So can I or a viewer make an educated understanding of this, interpretation of this, analysis of this, whatever the case may be? And I want it to be scholarly, as we mentioned, right? So you guys are sort of covering the topic, you're covering the broad, big picture kind of thing. And any as we mentioned before, with your data figures, et cetera, do I have the specific numbers in there, quantities, values, dates, that kind of stuff. And then once we've got the sort of just the mechanics of stuff, and then, okay, intellectually, we got some good arguments going here. I get that. I understand that. Then there's going to be this overall feel, which is a hard one, especially as you guys are just sort of getting getting your toes wet in this field. But it's like, hey, does it all flow together, right? Does it all make a compelling argument? Is it like, oh, strong? Yeah, I read this, and of course that makes sense. One of the best indicators that you've made a good figure, or you've made a good presentation, or a good paper, is when you're given your slides, or you've given me this thing to read, and then immediately the viewer's like, question. Like, yeah, are you sure? What about blah, 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 right? That's not a bad thing. That means you've given the audience enough information, and he or she sort of consumed it, and then like, oh my gosh, they just introduced me to the subject, they made this argument, hey, I wonder about, perfect, right? So I've communicated some information to this person, I've made an argument, and that person is starting to have a dialogue with me. That's a good sign, right? A good sign when we're not getting distracted by the grammar, when we feel like you have a good hug of the data and the subject. That's awesome. And then just the last little bit that you guys wanted to check is, hey, do I have all my references in there? Everything that I made an argument for that I didn't directly observe, did I cite a person or the source? And then if I cited it, I want to run through down to the bottom and make sure that it actually is in there. Because sometimes people, hand type it in there or something and it's not in the bibliography. So one, I want to make sure that the things are cited in the text with author year, and then when I go to the bottom, if my audience tried to go find that reference, can he or she find that reference? Cool. So that's the basic idea. So we're gonna say, hey, do I walk up to this paper the first time ever? Do I understand what's going on? Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then do I have all the little silly things that would block my reader from understanding this? Spelling, grammar, okay, got that all good. Then we get to the scholarly view. Then we get to the sort of overall feel, and then we can just wrap up by checking the citations. Cool? All right. So there's all different kinds of tools we can use, but we start with a complete draft because that's really where your paper's already started, but the first complete draft is really where we can give you the real feedback, right? And so here is an example of one of my papers, right? So I'll show you guys what I did. So this is an outline, starting with an outline. This is the third draft. This is the fourth draft. Again, because it was so good, I want to show it to you one more time. This is the 9th draft. This is the 15th draft, right? These papers that we write, I think our mitigation paper probably had about 30 or 40 drafts, right? Yeah, at least something like that probably, right? Our self-study probably had at least 10 drafts or 12, yep. So that's the norm. So getting to the first complete draft does not mean the paper is done. That's when the paper that's when we really start to go, right? That's when we can edit, grab this, move that, delete that, add that. And so this is, again, it's not something we're torturing you with. This is the skill that we use all the time in our professional being scientists and being environmental professionals.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, draft means that you're still working on it. So just because it says complete draft, it means that all the components are there, all the elements of the paper are there. You're still working on it. So you're still restructuring it, you're still editing it, you might add a figure here or there, whatever it is, you can add some references, but in large part, the components are there. You have your working abstract, you have your working introduction, you have your working method section, whatever it is. You transition from the outline to your draft, right? And so a complete draft just means that all the components are there, but you're still working on it.
Totally. Yeah, please, Willie. Yeah.
How long does it take for you to reach a final draft for this?
It depends. Sometimes we only have a weekend, right? So sometimes we have to go through 10, 12 drafts in a weekend, right? This particular one was written with many different people, and this was government agencies and a lot of controversy and legal issues and stuff about if people could say certain words or certain things. So this took probably, a month, something like that. But it's because there were 30 people involved, and so 2 people is hard, right? I totally with you. I get it. The more people you add, the harder it gets. But more typically, I would say, the most recent paper I have that's just coming out in press, that was a relatively short paper. That was pretty short. I think we wrote the bulk of the paper in like a day or 2, and then the editing took about 2-3 weeks. Not every single hour of every single day, but spent an hour or 2 here on it today, and then my co-writer spent an hour or 2 the next day, and then back to me, and then like that kind of thing. So I don't know, many hours, 8 hours, 10 hours of editing, something like that, maybe more. It depends on the sophistication and how complex the topic is.
Once you start learning kind of the tricks of it and you get comfortable writing scientifically, because a lot of you, especially for me, right? I was trained junior high school, most of my college career is creative writing, right? We're doing very different styles, but once you get all those tools, you can crank out a lot. Like, so for our program review that I just submitted, there was, like, last weekend I wrote something like, so the updated draft that I did for like 8 hours, I added like 35 pages of text and figures and stuff, right? And so sometimes I wrote 2 of my 3 PhD dissertation chapters in 2 days. The first chapter,
Excellent.
First chapter took me like 3 years, So it also depends on the availability of people, and some people get very opinionated. Sometimes you annoy them, and they're just like, yeah, fine, whatever. But everyone's different. So different process.
So, anybody want to guess? I use this in some other classes, but anybody want to guess what this is? Yeah. Yep. So this is probably after 40 or 50 drafts, and so this is his editing up the many times tweaked, many refined phrasing. So he's moving this sentence around and add this in and change this and do that and all that kind of stuff, right? So everybody does this, right? And again, very few of us are great writers, right? Most of us are not good writers, but the draft is the thing, the iteration. Let me take this, make it better, boom. Okay, let me try to make this better, boom. That's the skill. So getting it down on the paper is really just the first step. And then really where the improvement comes for most of us is in this revising. As I think I told you guys, I had one of my professors who was also associated with Mark. He was weird, he's a freak. He would sit there and he would not type anything for like 5 days and just steeple his fingers and stare at the screen. And then he'd go like, okay, right. And then he'd start to type. And it would basically be more or less pretty close to, it was never perfect, but very close to being perfect. But he's weird. He's the only human being I've ever encountered that does that. Okay, there you go. Now I've encountered 2. I've encountered 2 in my whole life. He was a soccer hooligan. I hope you're not a soccer hooligan. Yeah, there you go. So, so for most of us, it's the get on the paper, and then we can make it. I think some of us would get so nervous or so anxious, or oh my God, get that complete draft, and then you can start better.